Welcome. Good evening. My name is Jolene, and I am with VTA's Community Outreach and Public Engagement. And I want to thank you all for coming to this meeting this evening, for giving your time. We're here this evening to update you on the Curtner Station Transit-Oriented Development. We're also going to introduce the developers to you, as well as introduce the Curtner Station Access Study. Next slide. How to use the translation. If you need to use translation, go ahead and click on the interpreter button and then select Spanish. Remember to mute your original audio. Next slide. First, we'd like to get to know who's here today. And so we're going to do a poll. After the poll, we'll go over a few housekeeping items, and then we'll move into doing going over the agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch a poll, and there's 6 questions. We'll give you about 3 minutes to answer those. So because there's 6 questions, go ahead. You'll have to scroll down to answer. Is everybody able to see the poll?
The poll disappeared after I answered one question.
Okay. Let's see.
It disappeared on me too, and I didn't answer a question.
Okay, so I'm going to relaunch it really quick. Okay, nobody has answered it, so I'm going to relaunch it. Here we go. You guys should be able to see it. On the side, there's a little gray bar, or gray bar that you can use that'll help you scroll down. So we'll give you the time to do that. A few minutes.
Okay.
Got maybe 1 more minute.
Yeah. So about half of you have answered right now.
They're trying to submit again.
You're not muted, or you wouldn't hear her.
I'm having challenges when I submit the button, hit the submit button, it's not moving.
It won't move.
Oh.
I will show you guys how to do. When we're done, I will show the results, and
Okay.
then after the results, you can go ahead and you can exit out of it.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, it's been 3 minutes, Jolene. Looks like
Okay.
you've got about 62%.
Perfect. So I'm going to end the poll. Let's see what I'm going to share the results, and then we'll go through the results. So it looks like most of you live near Curtner Station and that you're homeowners. I see that about 35% of you guys do park at the park and ride lot and do take the train. there's about 53% of you that don't take the train. A lot of you drive to get around. Quite a few of you walk. And then there's a small percentage of you guys that take the train or carpool. If we go to the next one, we don't need to do that one. Let's see. So it looks like some of you guys attended, about 12% of you, or two of you guys have attended both meetings. And then if you look, there are others that attended the 2 prior community meetings. But most of you are new to this. A lot of you guys got your information through the website, and that's really helpful for us to know how you guys are getting your information. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'm going to close the poll. And you guys, if you want, you can exit out of it if it's blocking your screen. Next page or slide. Okay, I want you guys to look at this and read it. Our community is really changing, and it's changing all around us. And I know that can make us feel very uncomfortable. Some of us like the change, some of us don't like the change. As we talk about things that are happening tonight, we really just want to make sure that this is a very respectful meeting, that you guys are showing respect and that we show respect, and that we're just being kind to all the participants. I also want to point out that this event is being recorded by VTA, and it will be available on VTA's YouTube channel. I will have it linked to the webpage, as well as the slides for this presentation will as well. Next page. So we're going to go over tonight's agenda really quickly. So there's going to be a lot of information that we're giving tonight. And so before we begin, we do want to be able to do a brief introduction of VTA staff, the developer team, as well as the station access study consultants. We'll do a land acknowledgement and introduce VTA. We'll provide you with background information, project updates, and milestones. Our developer partners will share their experience and their plans moving forward. We'll introduce the access study consultants, and they will provide an overview of the access study. When we're done with the presentations, we're going to go into breakout rooms. And this is where you'll spend time with the developer and the access study consultant. If you'd like to be assigned to the Spanish breakout room, please type in Spanish in the chat. That way we'll make sure we're able to get you into the right room. Can you hold on one second? Kathleen?
Yes.
Can you unmute the interpreters, please? Alejandro and Charles.
Yes, 1 minute, please. Find them.
Thank you. Just 1 second.
I'm looking for them. Here we go. Why will they not let me? Here we go. Charles, I'm unmuting you. Hopefully you can hear me. There you go. I got one. And now I'm looking for Alejandro. Well, I just need to find him.
You could type him in the find participants.
See, once my screen changed.
Sorry, guys. We just want to make sure that everybody is able to. I just did that. Okay.
Find him. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. So where was I? I was with chat that if you need the Spanish to be part of the Spanish room, please type that in so that we're able to make sure you're in the correct room. After the breakout rooms, we'll return, we'll report back. There'll be time for questions and answers, and then we'll go over the next steps. So next slide. Thanks.
Cut that one.
So we would really like to do a brief introduction of who is here in the room, or who is here with you from VTA, as well as the developers and our access consultants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call out their name, their first name, and they're going to introduce themselves. And I'm going to have to do that quickly because I muted them. Oh,
How about-
Jocelyn.
Good evening. I'm Jocelyn Hazen, VTA's project manager for this project.
Perfect. Kathleen.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen Podrosky with the Community Outreach Team.
Aiko.
Good evening. I'm Aiko Cuenco, VTA project manager for the Curtner Station Access Study.
Atisha.
Good evening. I'm Atisha Vashne. I've been supporting with project management efforts on this project and represent VTA.
Ted. Are you able to, he's probably muted. Let me.
There we go. I'm Ted McMahon with Bayview Development.
Matt.
Matt Conti, Bayview Development, one of the co-developers.
Yuri.
Hi, I'm Yuri with CBNA as well, one of the co-developers.
Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Davis with Fair and Peers. I'm the lead for the Access Study development.
Okay, and Lillian.
Hi, I'm Lillian Ayala, and I'm with Fair and Peers.
Thank you, guys. So as we move forward, I want to do a land acknowledgement. So VTA acknowledges that we're talking about a project that is on ancestral lands of the Ohlone, specifically the Tamian and the Muwekma Ohlone tribes. We acknowledge them not just as the first people of this land on which the community lives and works, yet they remain thriving members of Bay Area communities today. It's possible that historical and cultural resources will be discovered when VTA begins development projects. VTA makes efforts to preserve those remains and ensure that they are returned to the community most connected to them. Next slide. Oh, I am so sorry, I'm going back. Let's go back to introduction, because we do have, I really want to make sure that we know that that we have Lawana C. Mua here, and she is representing District 6 for Dev Davis. Sorry, we can go forward now. So, yeah. So what does VTA do? When people think about VTA, they often think of fixed route public transit, but we actually do more than that. VTA is a special district, and we're made up of a board of directors that are 12 local city or county office holders. If you look at this wheel, it shows all the ways that VTA touches transportation throughout Santa Clara County. Our core transit service is the bus, light rail, and the ADA paratransit, but we also construct facilities like the new Milpitas and Berryessa BART stations. We're responsible for local highway improvements like the 101 Blossom Hill interchange, which will help traffic move so much more smoothly. We fund Caltrain along with San Mateo and San Francisco counties, and we encourage the integration of transportation and land use planning. So we design communities that work for everyone. That being said, VTA has a transit-oriented development program which really focuses on land use. And I'm going to turn the time over now to Jocelyn, who is the project manager for the Curtner Station TOD. Next slide.
Thank you, Jolene. So I wanted to start with a little bit of background about transit-oriented development. So transit-oriented development, or TOD as it's commonly referred to, is a development strategy that prioritizes pedestrian and bike-friendly neighborhoods around transit. Generally, it's located within a half-mile of quality public transit, and it's a mixture of uses such as housing, office, retail, open space, etc. And that mixture of uses is really critical as it allows people to get from home to work or work to shopping to home more easily. Next slide, please. So why TOD? What are the benefits? So building development around transit obviously increases transit ridership by making transit more accessible and convenient and interconnected for everyone. It also reduces congestion and greenhouse gas emissions by prioritizing non-car trips, and it promotes vibrant community spaces and station areas. Lastly, it increases access to jobs, housing, and other opportunities for residents of all income levels. Next slide. So VTA started its TOD program in 2009, and the goals of the program are to increase ridership, to leverage our development sites as catalysts to create equitable transit-oriented communities, to create long-term stable revenue to support transit operations for our agency. And as you can see on the map on the right, our portfolio has 25 sites currently, and within those sites, there's capacity to build over 5,000 housing units, of which at least 2,000 would be affordable, and to create over 13,000 jobs. Other goals of our program include affordable housing. VTA has an affordable housing policy that states that for each project that has housing, at least 20% of that housing would be affordable. And overall, we have an affordability goal of 35% for our entire portfolio. VTA also strives for green building, and we have green building and sustainable landscape policies. And lastly, access and station area improvements. We're aware that a lot of our station areas could use enhancing, and this program is a really great way to leverage funding for those improvements. Next slide, please. So Curtner, the station that we're talking about today is located on the corner of Curtner Avenue and Canoas Garden, right along Highway 87, just south of downtown. The development area is comprised of 3 parcels, totaling almost 4 acres. And the station serves both VTA light rail and bus. And as many of you who drive by the station frequently know, the parking at this location is greatly underutilized. Before COVID, our daily weekday parking utilization was at about 15%. So there's about 450 parking stalls there, and generally only 75 of those were used on a daily basis. So, and also just to note, as part of this project, the developer will be required to maintain 100 transit parking stalls at all times, which would be dedicated strictly for transit riders. So in 2008, we held 2 community meetings. There's 2 pictures of those meetings down at the bottom. And at those meetings, we heard concerns about crime and safety right now at the station. And then we also heard concerns about potential traffic and parking implications from a future development. And then lastly, we got a lot of feedback about the desire for neighborhood serving retail, including the potential for a grocery store. So in 2019, we released a request for developer qualifications and then a subsequent request for proposals in 2020. Next slide. So VTA identified a set of goals for the project, which was included in the RFP. And those included increasing transit ridership, building a high quality mixed use development that's consistent with the city's general plan, providing revenue for VTA, creating much needed affordable housing, and providing access and transit station area improvements. And lastly, creating community workforce opportunities. So VTA convened a review panel, which did also include a neighborhood representative, to evaluate the proposals that we received. And ultimately, the panel decided to recommend, and VTA's board of directors selected, a development group comprised of Bayview Development Group and Civil and Building North America. And our evaluation team was really excited about their proposal because they had a great mixture of uses that will allow people to live, work, play, and obtain access to healthcare services. And lastly, their proposal also included some really great stationary enhancements that we were really excited about. So now I'm going to pass it off to Matt with Bayview, who's going to go through their vision for the project.
Great, thank you, Jocelyn. Hello. Typically, we like these community meetings to be a little bit more interactive and in person, but unfortunately, the circumstances are what they are. We hope in the future there is an opportunity to meet in person with many of you, the community stakeholders, as there's no substitute for face-to-face interaction. In any event, we're excited to introduce ourselves, gather your thoughts and feedback, and continue the forward momentum on this project. I'd like to start by introducing our team. I'm Matt Conti with Bayview Development Group, or BDG. We have two other team members with us here this evening, Ted McMahon, CIO of Bayview Development Group, and Yuri Namov-Corbera with CBNA. Together, BDG and CBNA compose the co-development team. CBNA is the development arm of Bouygues Construction, one of the top 10 largest contractors in the world. In a moment here, you'll see a sample set of the international experience that these guys bring to the table. They're well-versed in public-private partnerships as well as transit-oriented development. You'll find Curtner Station will be a public-private partnership between us as private developer and BTA as public entity. My group, Bayview Development Group, is a local San Jose headquartered developer who brings the local boots on the ground experience to the project. Our team also consists of our architect, IBI, also with a wide breadth of international experience and a transportation-focused group. On the middle right of this slide, you'll see our general contractor, which is a joint venture between Americaribe, which is CBNA's US construction arm, and Trubeck Construction. Trubeck is a local general contractor and one that I'd expect you'd see their signs if you're driving the freeways of the Bay Area. The final two partners I'd like to highlight are our affordable housing developer, Eden Housing, and our senior living operator, Carlson Management. Eden is one of the largest affordable housing developers in California and a very prominent Bay Area name. Carlson is a Northern California family-run senior living operator with a number of projects throughout the Bay Area. Next slide, please. So here you see 4 past CBNA projects. These are ones don't expect you to recognize as they are international projects in London, Paris, and Zurich, but I think this provides you with a sense of the scale and transit-oriented development experience in CBNA's tool belt. Next slide, please. Here's a selection of 4 recent BDG projects. If you drive the 280 and 87 freeways in San Jose, you've likely seen our recently delivered Miro Towers, which consist of 630 rental units, and it sits right across the street from City Hall in downtown San Jose. That's top right. We entitled 500 units on the West Dublin BART stop, top right here. And we just delivered an office building at the Lawrence Caltrain station in Santa Clara, bottom left. So you'll see we have great South Bay experience along transit corridors. Next slide, please. And this last sample project slide provides projects completed by our general contractor. These are projects that I'd also expect you might recognize. You have Apple Park, the spaceship in Cupertino, and then Uber's headquarters in San Francisco. Next slide, please. So here we have a bird's eye view of the site that we're discussing this evening. I'd like to take an opportunity to orient you to it. Highway 87 runs through the top middle of the screen, and the Curtner light rail station sits in the middle of the freeway with the station entrance. There's kind of a red shade there, pretty close to the Highway 87 on-ramp label. Mill Pond Phase 1 and Communications Hill is to the upper right, and then the Cathedral of Faith sits just at the bottom of this slide. The primary intersection, as you're likely aware, is Curtner Avenue and Canoas Garden Avenue. And today, as we already noted, it serves as a service parking lot for the light rail. Next slide, please. So this land is owned by VTA, and it will remain owned by VTA. VTA originally conceived the site as 315 apartment units, with 20% of that total, or 65 units, being set aside for affordable housing. We evaluated the site through the RFP process, and while it sits on the edge of Willow Glen, one of the more affluent areas of San Jose, we really struggled to make market rate housing economically feasible. We went through a number of permutations, which is what you see here, evaluating many different product types that range from apartments to office to hotel to retail. And the bottom outlined in green, that this is where we landed. And really, I'd say the 4 primary reasons. Number 1, it allowed us to achieve VTA's goals. Number 2, we identified an unmet demand for specific product types in this location. Number 3, it's economically feasible. And then number 4, it fits within the existing zoning, which is important because that will allow us to work through the city entitlement process. It'll just be a much cleaner and faster process. Next slide, please. So here we have the ground floor site plan to walk you through our proposal, which consists of really 5 primary pieces. In blue, in the lower left, you have our medical office building. And for this, think prospective tenants like a Sutter, Kaiser, Stanford. Where the red and the purple meet, we've proposed senior living, and that's 120 units of assisted living and memory care. In dark yellow, we have the affordable housing portion of the project, and that's about 65 units. In red, you'll see the retail, about 8,000 square feet. And then finally in purple, we have the community benefit, which would consist of like transit kiosks and bike station type areas. A couple other items to identify in this site plan. So we've got one thing that we're proposing is rerouting the 26 surface bus line that currently comes through the surface parking lot and loops through the lot and then exits back onto Curtner. Part of the reason for doing this, we feel like it will create efficiency in that bus route system and also alleviate some of the traffic on Canoas Garden by rerouting it to just keeping it on Curtner. Next slide, please. And here you have our currently proposed master plan. The Curtner Canoas corner has a 240,000 square foot, 6-story medical office building. That's the upper left. Between that and the freeway is the freestanding parking structure. So that gray roof that you see, that'll provide a nice buffer along the freeway. And that's where we're going to be replacing those 100 stalls that currently sit in the surface parking lot that will be available for those VTA light rail riders. As we thought about this design, we felt that it was important to taper the height from the 6-story medical office building down to the single-story. There's a daycare on that small triangle down in the lower right on this slide. We recognize that that portion of the development, it abuts single-family, single-story homes, and so tapering it down just felt appropriate to enter into that neighborhood. Another design element is the opening of the outdoor podium areas to the community instead of building a wall hard up and really turning our back on what's immediately across the street, that Cathedral of Faith and overall community. In this one, the first bar that you'll see in the middle of the design is our senior living. And then the next 2 L shapes as you go to the right are our affordable housing portions of that project. Next slide, please. And so as we studied the area and received preliminary feedback from neighbors, we understand traffic congestion is a major concern. I'm seeing some of that pop up in the chat. Wanted to draw attention to our proposed product types in medical office and senior living, which by design we feel will help mitigate some of those traffic concerns. If you look at traditional office, there's peak arrival, call it 8 to 10 a.m. And then departure from 5 to 7 p.m. with the majority of traffic during really 4 hours of the day. As you think about a medical office execution, it really it spreads this traffic out over the course of the day as you have folks coming in and out throughout the day. And then as you think about traditional apartments where you provide 2 stalls per 2-bedroom unit and 1 stall per a studio or 1 bed, as you think about a senior living execution, the requirement here is to provide 0.25 stalls per unit. So on an 120 unit project, we have 30 stalls that we'd be putting into that portion of the project. So goes a way to decrease that traffic. So this slide here that you're looking at, this is the hero shot of that hard corner. Oh yeah, that's fine. The hard corner, Curtner Avenue and Canoas Garden. This is the medical office building, and then where you see the blue writing, that's the parking structure, freestanding parking structure. I'd also draw your attention to the upgraded pedestrian walkway and bike lanes, as well as traffic signaling at this intersection. The next slide will give you the before and the after, the proposed versus existing. Next slide, please. And so this one is an image with your back at the Cathedral of Faith, looking down the Grand Paseo to enter the light rail station, which sits at the end, right in the middle, blue lettering that says Curtner. You've got your medical office to the left, and you've got your senior living to the right, and then you've got ground floor retail and pedestrian activation through. Next slide, please. The next slide will be our before and after. Next slide. And then finally, we have an image looking down Canoas back toward Curtner Avenue. And this one really provides some perspective of the single-story daycare on the right-hand side and the enhanced streetscape and bike lanes that we're proposing along Canoas. And so Mill Pond is the street that cuts between the daycare and the affordable housing building that in this image you see with the blue writing again that says Curtner Station. Next slide, please. So we skipped over the before and after, which is fine. This one of the last slides we have here. This is just the rough timeline that we're working around. So we plan to submit our initial entitlement package at the beginning of 2022. And so that's the process with the city of San Jose to approve the plans that we are proposing. We anticipate that process runs about 9 months. And then following that approval, we start working on our construction drawings. And that process takes about 6 months. And then we're looking at starting construction sometime mid-2023 with construction completion coming in mid-2025 to late 2025. Next slide. And so I'll leave you with one last look at the master plan zoomed out. So you can see, in this one, you can see proximity to downtown San Jose in the upper left, and then the beautiful foothills in the distance. I'll now pass it off to Aiko with VTA, who will introduce the access study process.
Thanks, Matt. So I want to share a little bit about our station access study. This is a separate but parallel effort that looks at the circulation and access needs of the station area. We want to make sure that any future development built at our transit station is well integrated with the existing neighborhood, and that we're able to work with the community to identify improvements that'll make it easier to walk, bike, and take transit to the station and surrounding area. I'll turn it over to Steve Davis and Lillian Ayala, our consultant team from Fair and Pierce, will provide us with an overview of this access planning effort.
Thanks, Aiko. Yeah, as Aiko mentioned, the access study portion of this is primarily focused on how people get to, from, and around the Curtner station area. So that would be whether it is as a pedestrian, as a cyclist, a driver, transit rider, or using a combination of those transportation options. So the study will include listening to the community to understand thoughts, concerns, and perspectives. So obviously there's a lot of that discourse happening here on transportation around the existing station and future transit-oriented development site. We are also conducting an independent investigation of the site ourselves to understand the access needs and accommodations. And all of that information will be synthesized with the community input to identify a suite of potential access improvements that both enhance mobility and safety. Additionally, we'll investigate and recommend transportation demand management strategies or TDM as we like to refer to it, which focus on incentivizing desirable and sustainable means of access to the new transit-oriented development. So a primary goal of these strategies is shifting the new trips, the new travel to and from this site away from people driving alone in cars and towards more sustainable means like riding transit or carpooling, walking, biking, etc. All of these improvements and programs will then be evaluated and their potential implementation prioritized so that we can pursue those projects, those programs with the greatest effect the most quickly as part of the development. This fall, right now, is focused mostly on the first two elements you see here to build an understanding of the needs, and then we'll begin identifying the improvements and strategies to try to address those needs to the extent possible. And the goal of that is to then finalize the overall access study by late spring. So next slide. So we've already begun an investigation of the existing and planned infrastructure in the area as part of both this project, as well as a parallel effort that we've been doing with the city of San Jose to evaluate transportation safety along Curtner Avenue specifically. So we'd like to share some of that background as a starting point for our discussion in the breakout sessions that will follow this. The map you see here highlights the VTA Curtner light rail station with the two yellow stars at either end of that station representing the access points for people to reach the platforms. The blue highlighted area to the left of that reflects the transit-oriented development site that we've been discussing. Sidewalks or pedestrian paths are provided along most of the roadways in the vicinity of Curtner Station, but there are a few locations where sidewalks aren't provided, and those include the north side of Curtner Avenue between Canoas Garden and Stone Avenue, so that's the line across the top, the south side of Mill Pond Drive to the east of Canoas Garden, as well as the area along Sands Drive and Carroll Drive down to the south here. I do want to flag that the missing sidewalk on Curtner Avenue in particular has been mentioned in several other presentations, so we are aware of that from other studies we've done here, and particularly an issue as it creates some confusion for pedestrians that are seeking to access the direct station area. Next slide. So this slide introduces what the bicycle facilities in the area are. Back one. So there are actually two types of bike facilities that we see here. There are normal bike lanes along Curtner Avenue, running east and west to the study area. And then there are also two disconnected pieces of the Highway 87 Guadalupe River Trail that run north of Curtner Avenue, north of Unified Way, and then south of Carroll Drive. Both of those are on the east side of Highway 87. So you'll note that there's a lot of dashed lines on here. Those are facilities that are proposed or have been identified as part of the City of San Jose's Better Bikeways 2025 planning effort, which includes putting formal bike lanes on Canoas Garden Avenue, includes upgrading the bike lanes along Curtner Avenue, and also would involve filling in that gap in the trail on the 87 trail between Curtner and Carroll Drive on the east side of 87. Would just note that everything that is identified in the plan, the bike plan, is still at the planning level. No specific funding or timelines for implementation have been identified for those projects. Next. And then, obviously we've been talking quite a bit about transit, as this is a transit-oriented development on a VTA site. The primary transit service in the area is, of course, the light rail line, which is the blue line running in the median of Highway 87 and serving the Curtner station. And then bus service in the area is generally provided by Route 26, which you see here in the purple. And all of the yellow-orange circles are current light rail or bus stops in the area, including the transfer stations. As noted, part of this project will include investigating options for having new stops installed on Curtner Avenue to serve bus route 26 without it diverting onto Canoas Garden. Next. So bringing that all together, we just wanted to share a few examples of the kinds of conditions we were talking about. And so what you generally see across the top here are conditions along Curtner Avenue specifically. And at the top left and the top right, you can see those are different locations where there are not currently a sidewalk along Curtner on the north side. And as you see on the top left, there is a trail worn in from folks walking there anyway. And you can see in the right that there is actually someone walking there in that photo, despite there not being a sidewalk. And in the center on the top there, that's a photo of the intersection for the northbound ramps, where you can actually see a cyclist who has come off of the Guadalupe Trail behind us in this photo and is seeking to use the crosswalk and the sidewalk to continue using the gap in the trail there. Across the bottom are photos that are more specific to the Curtner station area. And so the two photos on the left in the bottom center are a couple of the ways that people can get from Curtner on into the site or into the light rail station as a pedestrian. So the bottom left is a path that was built in that connects into the VTA parking lot and allows people to reach the bus stop and the south entrance to the platforms. Whereas the center photo is looking down the steps from the platform directly to Curtner Avenue in between the two highway bridges. And then the bottom right is just showing that one of the concerns we've heard from several folks are that signage on the platforms to direct people where to go once they've exited trains can be challenging. So it's been especially unclear to folks that once they've exited a train, if they're looking to reach the bus, it's not clear that you should actually walk away from Curtner Avenue towards the transfer station, as opposed to walking towards Curtner Avenue where there aren't bus stops today. And next slide. So the last piece we just want to acknowledge, as I mentioned, we've been working with the city on a Vision Zero effort to understand transportation safety challenges and needs along the Curtner Avenue corridor specifically. So as part of that effort, we've reviewed a 5-year collision history along Curtner Avenue, which includes a number of collisions that have occurred near Curtner Station. Specifically, 3 of those collisions in that period have resulted in fatalities, all of those involving pedestrians near the station since 2016. And a number of other collisions have occurred involving bicyclist pedestrians in the area as well. Beyond Curtner, we've also heard concerns from residents and stakeholders and seeing concerns from folks here about Canoas Garden Avenue adjacent to the site, particularly as it involves access to some of the adjacent neighborhoods. So some of the intersections like down at Mill Pond, as well as access for church and school activities and movement of students in the vicinity of the area. And finally, just want to acknowledge that all of these numbers are data, but really they are also people and events and things that have happened in our community. So these fatalities are people that have unfortunately lost their lives using our network in the city. So we're certainly open to hearing more about those occurrences and want to hear more stories from people, more experiences from people during the breakout sessions. So we really have the best understanding we can have of what's going on in this area. With that, I will hand it back to Jolene to bring us toward the breakout sessions.
I'm going to actually take over for a quick second. Thank you. We're having some technical glitches and Jolene has been frozen and she's the host. So I'm going to try to get everybody over to your breakouts while we work on getting Jolene back without dropping the meeting. In the event that the meeting should go dark, I'm just going to ask everyone to log back in. We'll get the meeting back up really quickly. We're not sure how this happened. It's the first time it's happened in a meeting. Hate to say congratulations, you're the first group, but congratulations, you're the first group. So we're going to get through this. But we're going to see if I can just get you to the breakout rooms. So this was not planned this evening. We had a much better rehearsal. So I think what I'm going to do is assign automatically, but see, it doesn't, yeah. So what we had is we had everything already created. And what I get as a co-host is I get to create it. So I'm going to try to do just 2 because we didn't have any requests for Spanish. And we're going to see how this works. So bear with me. And I'm so sorry about this, folks. There we go. I'm not sure if it's sending or not. I guess I opened. Okay, so I guess what you'll do is you'll receive an invitation and you can accept the invitation. And then we're going to work on getting Jolene back. In the meantime, you'll hopefully you'll have your breakout, your developer and your access study teams. We might have to do a little shuffling with the teams that will be working with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to give just a second so we make sure everybody makes it over into the breakout rooms as needed.
It looks like we're not getting bifurcated. I think Jocelyn, myself, and Yuri are supposed to be in one breakout room, and then you, Steve, and Iko into another.
That's right.
Matt, Yuri, do you guys want to leave this one? The three of us can leave this one and go back to the waiting room.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
I'm going to share a screen here so that we've got something to look at and reference as needed.
Do you want us to leave cameras off and microphones off, or are we allowed to ask questions via audio? How do you want to handle that?
Yeah, so I think the idea of this is to allow folks to ask questions with audio. We're going to ask a series of questions. And so if folks would like to answer via audio or through the chat, you could do it either way.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you all for joining. With this one, I think we wanted to start it off. Let's see. I think we had a couple questions that we just wanted to pose to get a better sense of, I guess, some of who's on the call, and then also what this first one here. What is it that you guys love about this community, whether you live in the community or work in the community? What are some of the great things that we should recognize as we start working in a community like this? And then along with that kind of same question, the flip side of that is where do you guys see room for improvement within the community?
Well, I'll start it so that people will be a little bit better to join in. My mother actually lives in the community. She is a resident of her residence is through the roof. So I decided I wanted to jump on to kind of see about this. The community, basically, I think one thing is that it didn't feel, although it's in a very busy area, it didn't feel as busy. I guess, I don't want to answer for her, but I guess the room for improvement, which is needed prior to this, and now I'm extremely concerned about, is Mill Pond used to be very quiet. The whole area around there used to be quiet. This, even being next to 87, we've had an increase in homeless, in crime, in drug use, in car accidents, and just, everything around there is getting sketchy. And when you are going to propose something to increase the amount of people and cars and things like that, where you have an older community in Mill Pond, because it is a 55 and over facility, then you've got a church that also has a school. So you have a lot of little kids running around and things like that. I think that the biggest problems in the room for improvement is to handle the traffic and congestion, and while providing safety for the people that live there, because right now the homeless situation is out of control and the crime is going up. And I think if anybody else here is in this room that lives in Mill Pond, I would really like you to talk to this, because I know that homeless people are just walking through that thing, and there's only one entrance and one exit, and you're talking about people who may need medical assistance and stuff like that. And if it's packed with the Cathedral of Faith and people trying to get to VTA, trying to get to this medical facility, trying to get to all these retail places, it's going to be a nightmare.
Thank you for sharing.
Maybe let me start by saying that we acknowledge everything you said, Tina, especially regarding the homeless. We've been there, as you can imagine. We have spent a lot of time going up and down on different times of the day as well, together with VTA, and we acknowledge. Leaving the traffic aside, let me share with you that it's already proven that development and bringing actually people into retails and having more movement of people, it's going to move away homeless, and automatically by just placing more signs and placing more lights, it's going to help as well on the security aspect, including at night. That's kind of proven in terms of developments, and you can see that happening not even around the world, but in San Jose as well, in downtown. Just by the fact of these new developments actually is making people safer, because new people move in there and then they start living their lives, and then that kind of puts stays, I would say, homeless away from just hanging around there. Maybe Matt, you could speak a little bit more, because at Bayview you guys have done a great job in downtown San Jose with a couple of your developments. So I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yuri, real quick, I hear what you're saying about that. However, I would like to totally disagree with you. Right down the street is the plant. I don't know if you've been to the plant. I don't go there. I don't go there at all because I have been accosted. I have been followed. With the homeless is out of control over there, and not even homeless, but just crime. There are people walking around that, and that's a huge retail complex. So I know what you're saying. However, I think the area is what is not conducive for it. You've got the railroad tracks right there off Monterey. That's a highway for the homeless. You've got people camping out in the parking lots. You've got people waiting for people to go to their cars. I'm concerned this is going to be the same thing. And they live in their RVs and all that stuff. So then you've got sanitation problems and things like that. And you've got the old people living in this, sorry, people that live there, I don't mean to call you old people, but the elderly living there. That's a huge concern. I worry about my mother and everybody that's living there. It is, so I know what you're saying. However, I think that is probably true in many areas, but the plant is worse than downtown San Jose. It is ridiculously high crime, not just homeless, but all over. And if anybody else wants to chime in, I know people are putting it in the chat, but I think other voices need to be heard as well, because this is a huge concern. And the property that's between 87 and Mill Pond, I guess it's owned by you guys, but we never know who we're supposed to call when you've got homeless people jumping the fence and going into people's backyards. So, that's the people that run Mill Pond don't seem to know either. And I just, I'm just very concerned, I think as much as anybody else, that although retail and things like that can provide some type of security with visibility, it doesn't seem like that's the case in that area when it comes. Even people at the church I have friends that go there, say that they get accosted all the time. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because there is something not a mile and a half away that is just as unsafe.
I don't know if I'm unmuted. Okay. I also live in Mill Pond, and I've only been there 5 years, but I have seen the increase in traffic, crime, and so forth. And you'll notice Cathedral of Faith, which is across the street, has now put up a fence completely around their property. I think what we used to have when I first moved in there, it was kind of a quiet little community. Not a lot of traffic from outside. I'm concerned when you put in more and more buildings that people are going to turn down Mill Pond because, one, they're going to be lost. And there's only one way in and out. And I think we need to have some kind of security that we feel with all of this buildings and traffic and people, that we can still maintain some kind of privacy. So I really, as I've talked to Matt before, feel strongly about a gate, access gate into Mill Pond. And I think you're going to probably, I'm concerned about where you're going to put traffic lights. Because I think even now, when the school is in session, for us to leave Mill Pond and get on Canoas, it's nip and tuck. It's, you know, and they have policemen out there on Sundays and also sometimes on school days to direct traffic. So you're just, Canoas is going to be just unbelievable. So I think somehow you have to address these problems.
And how many entrances are there going to be into this complex? Because like she's saying, it is a nightmare. I mean, my mom has to make sure that she schedules doctor's appointments at like 10:30 so that she doesn't deal with all the traffic that's going on there. And I mean, that's not always going to be possible for everybody. But, you know, I'm concerned about how many entrances are there going to be? So now, you know, even if you only have one or two, or even if you have 20, that's still a lot of people. Also, how tall, is there a height restriction in that area on construction? How high can buildings be when you're doing new construction? So I don't want to go off the crime thing, but I definitely want to find out about that, because you're saying 5 stories or more. Is that feasible there?
Yeah, so there are height restrictions, and we're well below the height restriction in this location.
What is the height? What is the height restriction?
I'd have to pull it up. We put together this design. We started work on this process, I don't know, a year and a half ago with VTA. So I haven't looked at the exact zoning recently.
Okay.
And then to go to one of your other questions about the number of entrances into the facility. So there's going to be one kind of primary entrance that gets you to that large parking structure that kind of actually cuts down that middle of the paseo that gets you to the light rail station. There would be a separate entrance for the senior living facility, and then there would also be another entrance for the affordable. So we're talking about
Did you guys go out there and survey when I mean, I don't know if you've been to that church. I've only been to a funeral there, but that thing is huge. The amount of people that go there could fill a community. It is huge. And I'm just wondering if you've been out there to say, okay, here we are, one street. You got people going to church, going to school, doing this. You got everybody going over here to the retail or the medical or whatever in one entrance. And then, oh, wait a minute, the people from Mill Pond are going to go there. And wait, I want to go up to the Scottish Rite thing. And I want to do, it's a lot for one little street. And, you know, I don't know why. And I don't know if the lady that was just speaking a minute ago, this is the first anybody, or at least my mom, who's lived there, gosh, how long has she lived in there? About maybe 3-4 years, has heard about this. So if we had known this was coming, she wouldn't have moved there. I can tell you that right now, because the security is already compromised. You got the worries about how is an emergency unit going to get in there if we're riddled with traffic, and now increasing the noise, the pollution, the possibility of crime, the possibility of vagrancy, and to increase homelessness. It's disturbing. I mean, life has changed right now. Everybody's home, and the homeless are moving into the suburbs like crazy. And the businesses are getting broken into. It's going to happen there too. It's just the way it works. It's life in the city. So I don't know. I feel that there wasn't a lot of transparency on this. And I feel that safety is being pushed to the side for the residents there and the churchgoers there and things like that in this thing that we're going to make this a more beneficial station. But who's it benefiting? What kind of retail are you going to have there?
I think VTA wants to chime in, and then there's a couple of people through the chat there asking us to that they want to have a moment as well. Jocelyn.
Thanks, Yuri. I just wanted to make sure I see a hand up, some people in the chat who want to speak, and I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to say something, as we only have limited time in the room. So Ellen, do you want to go ahead? I see your hand up.
I just wanted to say I'm a resident of Communication Hill, which is kind of across from the plant and next to the cemetery. We have a huge homeless problem in our area too, and they go over the hill between Communication North and South. It's like a little freeway over there. Every time they put up a fence, they tear down a hole. So it's not just for Mill Pond. I just wanted to say that. I also wrote in the chat, I'm very concerned about any kind of parking structure that's multi-story, because that's just like an apartment for the homeless. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Maybe to this comment, Ellen, we understand your thought on the parking structure. Let me say that we're planning to have that parking structure being secured either through a system or either with some personnel. We'll see. But as you may imagine, most of the parking structure will serve the medical office, and then it will have the respective stalls that will be open for VTA riders. So in any case, we will have security and we will make sure that that doesn't become a problem. But thank you, Ellen, for bringing that up.
And I would add, we're very sympathetic to some of the homeless concerns as we think about our site alone is not going to be a site that solves the homeless issues in this area. If anything, the new development should improve these going concerns. And then one other one that I wanted to touch on, just about as far as transparency goes, VTA has been working on this project for a couple of years. What's being proposed now, we're at the very preliminary early stages of that. And so that's why we're coming to the community in advance of proceeding with the process. And I think I previously outlined what the kind of steps moving forward are. But keep in mind, we're at the beginning of it. So we're not all the way at the end saying, hey guys, what do you think? We're trying to get to everybody early.
Okay.
I think Gina, you wanted to speak.
Yes, please. Thank you. So I am actually very excited that you are developing this area. My son, Kyle, this is him. He was 18 years old and he was killed trying to access the Curtner Avenue station in 2016. It's really dark. I mean, there's just so many issues and problems. And I think that your development will allow for, as I was seeing from some of your slides, those bright continental crosswalks, the bike lanes that are safe. You can co-opt with Vision Zero. They have many plans. And it's just been my goal to have safe access to public transportation everywhere in the city, and especially here at the Curtner Avenue station. So I'm actually really excited that you're doing this project. And my son Kyle loved taking public transit. He would have been an adult taking public transit. He didn't even want to learn how to drive. And he was visiting a friend near Curtner Avenue station. But one concern I have, and it hasn't been mentioned, but Fairs and Peers is aware of all the issues because I attended that meeting too, is that the access to the station that's more north, that it's stairs that go down underneath the 87 overpass, that's just a recipe for disaster right there. So I'm really hoping that you have a safe, bright, the lights were out when my son died under the overpass. So just much safer signage, bright lighting, sidewalks that make sense. I'm really excited. And so I just want to be positive that you guys have the opportunity to save some lives here, because a lot of lives have been lost in this area for obvious reasons. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, and our condolences. Actually, one of the first questions I had as we were working on the access study was, is that egress even necessary? The one that drops in underneath the highway. Can we just have the primary right down the middle of our site and close off the other?
Yeah.
At the same time, maybe Matt, if you move the slides to an image where we could show the parking structure, we're planning that there's not going to be sidewalk anymore crossing towards the freeway, right? So we're planning that all the entrance, at least from the corner and canoas, will go through the main entrance to the station, which is this paseo. that we're planning to do as much pedestrian as possible. And again, the bus stop will stop on Curtner, and then there will be this pedestrian, 100% pedestrian going between the buildings, and then you will turn left into the main plaza that you'll have the retail and this, what we call by community benefit space. It's basically like a bike shop or like one of these shops that provide more of a community service rather than just a business itself. And then you will just go in, through the tunnel to get to the access to the station. So that's our plan. But then the other access of the station, Gina, that's a very valid point, and I'm glad as well that Jocelyn from BTA is here, so they can take notes on that, because at the end of the day, that is especially BTA.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that feedback. I know it kind of drops off directly from the stairs right onto Curtner, where people are going extremely fast.
Ask a question?
Sure, Nancy, please.
My name is Nancy. I live in Mill Pond. I was at the meeting at Mill Pond a week ago. I met Jocelyn and Yuri. I had a lot of questions, so I didn't want to monopolize the time there or here. I just want to confirm, did you get my letter with my questions and my concerns? You should have gotten it even with the holiday, hopefully.
I did receive it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna start going through it.
Okay, I was in another room. Somehow I got switched to you guys midstream. I'm not sure why. The other questions I had, I left at that room, so I'll leave it there. But okay.
I did receive the letter too, and we are basically compiling all the comments, especially the ones we receive from you directly, and then we will issue some responses. But Nancy, thank you very much for the initiative, and I encourage anyone to reach out to us and provide comments or questions. Again,
that, Meg. So I think that is something that we will be looking at quite a bit with the access study, and flagging is one of the major concerns, because there certainly is some concern with how the.
Oh, they just went the 2 minutes.
I want to ask a question before everyone leaves, if I can. On Sunday, the Cathedral of Faith has their church services. When the church services end, the road on Canoas Drive is what I'm going to call a nightmare.
Yep.
Right.
Now, this is going to be a situation where everyone from this community is going to have one exit out onto the same road the church is coming out. Right. And if you were to measure the people living in the new development, would be almost like having Sunday all over again every day, every hour. That concerns me if there's only one way out of that place.
Right.
I have a question. This may have been covered earlier, and if so, I apologize. I was in and out. Anyway, how exactly is the parking going to be managed? In particular, you've got this pool of parking places, and you said 100 are for BTA parking. How is that going to be enforced?
From what they said, everybody has to use the parking garage. How they figure that's going to be enough for all of the commuters that take the light rail, which is nothing, because they said there's over 100 cars in the parking lot to take light rail. And when you drive by that parking lot on any given day, except church day, there's like 10 cars in the parking lot. Nobody takes the light rail from this station. And where are the church people going to park? Up and down our street.
That's why I asked them.
This is a
Well,
joke
they
as
don't know
far
yet.
as I'm concerned. And where's the BTA people? All of a sudden, it's just us talking, which I don't mind.
So we have Jocelyn here from BTA, and Matt and myself as well as the co-developers. So just I'll start the answer of the parking, and maybe Matt, you can complement. But when it comes to the parking, especially the parking that we are going to provide to BTA riders, I mean, the parking, it doesn't mean that it's going to be for anyone. It has to be for VTA riders. That's kind of the idea. Now, I guess, I mean, I'm not going down as granular as to really put together a process, but if I may answer out of the blue, I would say we will put together some kind of signage where those stalls will be specifically labeled for VTA riders. And then it will be basically, if you park there and you're not a VTA rider, you will have the risk of being towed, sorry. So I guess that could be an option. In any case, we're gonna have security on the parking structure because the other parking stalls will be serving the medical office. Matt, you have any other comments on that?
Yeah,
May I
I
ask
think.
a question?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So the parking garage is gonna be for the medical building, which is gonna be people going to see the doctor and people that work in the building. And the people who supposedly take VTA, which really, if you were there, very few people take that station. And probably the homeless people going in and camping out in the parking garage. We have a major problem with homeless people walking through this park. And we had security and they got fired because the guard was asleep in his car in the back parking lot. That's why you have to understand why we are so frustrated. At the meeting that you had at the clubhouse, somebody said, well, this is VTA property, so the city has nothing to do with this. Now, the other woman that was from VTA that was talking was saying about the city's gonna think about this and the city's gonna think about that. Who is in charge?
So I think there's a few things in there. You talked about the ridership. So I think one of the primary goals of this development is to increase that ridership. That's one of VTA's primary goals. Security, I mean, we've executed on parking structures just like this and haven't run into issues with homeless folks coming in because we do have security that isn't falling asleep in their car. That sounds like maybe a little bit of an isolated incident. What was the last point?
And regarding the problem in general about homeless, Carol, it's not really a problem. I mean, if you talk about the problem within the site, VTA is the owner of the site, and if there are any issues and problems within the property, VTA it's the owner. But then if homeless people or if there are any problems outside of the property line, then it's the city of San Jose who then steps in. Jocelyn, I don't know if you want to discuss that.
Was that your question, Carol, or were you asking, going forward, who's going to be, managing the process, VTA or the city?
Yeah, who is in charge of this?
Of the project?
We're being told VTA owns the property, so it's a done deal.
So it's
not the city. Wait, let me finish, please. The city has nothing to do with this. Now in this meeting, you're saying that the city has to approve traffic lights and whatever. So who is in charge?
So VTA owns the property and will be leasing it to the developer. And so VTA will continue to have, somewhat control over the property in terms of what happens in the long run. But the city also has say over what happens on the property through their entitlement process. So after, we move forward with the project, the developer will go to the city to get their entitlements. And through that, there'll be additional outreach and it'll go to council and there'll be other opportunities there.
Okay, well, friends of mine that have gone through this before in other areas of San Jose, with the new condos and new apartments that go around these facilities, they get one parking space per unit. And nobody has asked, because the traffic guy all of a sudden is talking to somebody else. Nobody addressed people are gonna have 2 cars. They are not gonna give up their cars to take light rail or any kind of public transportation. So where are they gonna park the other car?
That's right. That's their.
And so I think we have the product types that we're delivering on this site are the medical office. So there's not people living in that part. The senior living is a little bit different than a more traditional apartment project in that the parking ratios are much lower because most of those folks, when it comes down to it, they aren't driving. We have assisted living and memory care folks that will be living in that facility. So that's really only 30 stalls for 120 units on the affordable housing. I'm sorry, on the senior living. And then the last component is the affordable housing with 65 units. And with that, the expectation is that there is more light rail usership. And so I think we'll have the ability to dictate what that parking requirement may be for that third portion.
Hi, Monty Chavez here, Mill Pond resident. So I'd asked, good to see you here. So I'd asked some questions last time. They said, well, this is for the next group. And one is, how does the low-income housing that's planned here compare to the low-income housing that's just on the corner of Brown's Garden? And the other question is, are there any currently operating developments with the parking ratios that are proposed here that are working? Is there anything else around here in Santa Clara Valley, Santa Clara County with a 0.25% parking ratio that's working, that's not pushing traffic out to the streets? So there's just a couple questions.
Yeah, so I'll address the low-income housing one first. So it's a bit of a process to determine what the AMI rates will be. As we propose this project to VTA in partnership with our affordable housing developer, Eden Housing, what we've proposed is 70% of the units at 50% AMI of average median income, and then 15% at 40% AMI, and the remaining 15% at 30% AMI. I missed which project you were trying to compare it to. Which corner was that?
It's a kitty corner from where the development is planned. There's low-income housing there, just recently renovated. Colorful group of people gathering outside there at all hours. And also at the adjacent business directly across the street, that parking lot can be quite active at all hours as well.
Got it. Yeah, I can look into that. I don't know what their affordable requirements are on that site. As you may be aware, there are other affordable housing projects that are proposed in the area. There's one on the Cathedral of Faith site, as well as one on the Scottish Rite site. So those are ones that we've been tracking as well. And then on your second question about kind of analogs of where these parking requirements have are or are not working. So Carlson Management is the senior living operator that we are working on this project with, and every facility that they do, that is the parking ratio, and that's what works. So that has been proven out. As far as the medical office goes, what we're proposing is something in the kind of four stalls per 1,000 square feet. I think typically medical office users want something between 4 and 5 stalls per 1,000 square feet, and they recognize that in a dense urban area like this, when we tell them we can get them 4 per 1,000, they think it's the greatest thing ever that they can get that many stalls in such a dense urban location.
How many cars can park in the parking garage?
So that parking garage is 781 stalls.
Okay.
And that includes the 100 for transit.
I see Eugene has raised his hand. I don't know if you have a question, Eugene. Happy to answer.
Yes, I most certainly do. I used to take the 20, I'm just watching this project. I used to take the 26 bus many years ago to the Curtner Light Rail Station. One of the things I noticed about the area immediately is that for the residential apartments nearby. The nearest supermarket is over a mile away and often requires either getting into a car or, for the most part, for 90%, 5% it requires just getting into a car, unfortunately, with this area, since the nearest supermarket is over a mile away. What plans are there for this development to at least have some type of corner basic grocery store where people can just buy a loaf of bread and then go back and then be able to safely walk home?
So we've heard a lot from the community regarding this issue, and the community, we've heard that they would be extremely happy to see this type of use. As you've seen from the slides, we are proposing some square footage for retail. And yes, our vision would be to find a type of use that will allow for some kind of shopping or grocery. At the same time, maybe some type of cafe with a little terrace. So that's the type of retail that we are envisioning, which falls exactly on your request or concern. Matt, I don't know if you would like to add.
Yeah, I was just going to add, and I think what you identified as kind of a smaller footprint is actually probably the most beneficial, because you kind of, while you would love to see a grocer, like it'd be great if there was a Trader Joe's in there, that brings a lot of traffic with it. So a lot of folks are concerned about traffic, and if you had a full-scale grocer, that brings a lot more cars, the need for parking. But if you do a smaller scale, something where somebody can walk, pick something up, I think it's a great idea.
Mom and pop, I'm thinking about the bodega that I used to go to when I was living in New Jersey and then working in New York. You'd have a corner store where it's just not a really big supermarket, not real, just a small mom and pop, barely about 50 square feet, where you can get a loaf of bread, bottled milk, and then just walk and be on your way.
Exactly. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Simple stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we probably have about 3 more minutes if there's anyone else that hasn't had a chance to say anything that wants to add anything.
I just want to acknowledge, Jocelyn, we had some technical problems, I believe. We've lost Kathleen, we've lost Jolene.
So they're back in the main room.
Oh, they are back in the main room. Oh, okay, sorry about it.
So we're all going to go back to the main room together and kind of go over what we heard and close it out.
Okay.
Matt or Yuri, did you want to pull up any of your slides or any of the questions you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, sure. In the interest of time, I won't pull it up, but one of the questions that we led with in the other was, what is it that you guys love about the community? What makes it a great community to live in, work in? And then I think the flip side, and maybe we've covered some of this already, is just where's there room for improvement?
I see a hand up. There you go.
We're talking about, anyway, I'm from Mill Pond, I'm Joanne, and we like it here because on account of when we're in Mill Pond, it's our own little community, but we do have trouble with the homeless, and you've heard all about that. That's not going to go away, and they'll still be around, and because of the openness of the light rail to go in and get on the light rail, the homeless are in there. Now, I'm wondering, because I use the light rail, I'm wondering if they can do anything with lighting at night. Sometimes I've come in there through at 10:30 at night, and it's very, very dark. Get there, and I don't feel safe even trying to get to Mill Pond Drive on a bicycle. What I'm asking is, are they going to do anything with that? I understand it'll be some will be eliminated. But will they do anything with the lighting going to the light rail?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of our goals, is to improve the lighting in that tunnel system that you go under and to get into the light rail. I know it's dark and scary in there.
Definitely.
At the same time, with the entire development, again, we're planning to make sure that, especially at night, the way in and out of the station and through the plaza or pedestrian area, without the picture might be a little bit difficult to look at it, but would be to have everything lighting up at night, and then of course having the here.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
I think we
Will be returned to the main.
Are we returning to the other one?
That's what they said.
In 35 seconds.
35 seconds.
Any last comments before we go back to the main room?
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the technical issues.
Hey, no problem. Thank you very much.
We've practiced a lot, I promise, and in the
Everybody.
Okay.
Nothing
It's
goes
okay.
right on time.
At least we're able to talk to each other face to face. That's good.
Agreed.
So we move to the other one.
4 more seconds.
And that's the only access road to Mill Pond, so.
Yeah.